Hey, what's up, guys? This is Rick with the Digital Divide, and today I want to talk about the state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of people are really unhappy with the way that Phase 4 is going, and with good reason. Avengers Endgame was one of the biggest cinematic achievements in history, and the stakes and serious tone of everything leading up to this is gonna be next to impossible to match. I mean, we really cared about these characters, and there were so many iconic moments in these franchises. So the first show that we got from Disney Plus after Endgame was WandaVision, and this show is absolutely incredible.
How'd you even do all this?
I don't know how I did it. I only remember feeling completely alone. Empty, just endless nothingness.
Marvel has always excelled at maintaining the proper balance between a dead serious tone, sprinkled in with some mystery, sprinkled in with some humor, but it was never all about the humor, and shows like WandaVision at the time made me think that, wow, Marvel can't miss, because this was the first thing that I saw after Endgame, and it was up to the standard that I expected. Marvel has a way of building up and really taking the time to make you care about these characters. But if you look at Wanda in WandaVision compared to how her character was portrayed in Doctor Strange, it's like they stopped caring about story, and it became just a spectacle at that point. I mean, there was emotional depth to her character that was just lost in that new movie, and it just became basically a horror movie, and I like that, but it doesn't fit the tone, and it doesn't do the character justice.
I know what this place is.
The timekeepers have built quite the circus. And I see the clowns are playing their parts to perfection.
Now, Loki was the show that we got next, and this was an amazing show. Marvel was 2 for 2 at this point, and again, I thought, man, these guys can't miss. It's such a great show because it has this overwhelming sense of mystery, because at this point we're introduced to the TVA, we'd never heard of them before, and they seemingly have the ability to completely change timelines, and we learn that they didn't interfere with the events of Endgame because that was supposed to happen. So there is a very defined timeline that is supposed to happen, and it was such an interesting concept. This is also the show that introduced us to Kang the Conqueror, and this was supposed to be the next big bad for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was supposed to be the next Thanos, but unfortunately he's just not Thanos. He's not scary or intimidating at all. In fact, the first time we meet him, he just immediately gets killed by Sylvie like he's nothing, and I know that there are some arguments, though, that was supposed to happen, but it kind of doesn't make sense, because up until that point we had been led to believe that every single thing that he's done was to prevent his variants from taking over the universe and splitting the timeline into 1,000 pieces and just destroying everything. So why would he let her kill him without putting up a fight? It just doesn't make sense to me, especially if we're supposed to be given the idea that everything that happens was meant to happen or planned, and they already know everything each character is going to say and what they're going to do. So if she was always meant to kill him, then why bother with all the precautionary steps that happened during the course of the TV show? And the next time we see him is in the most recent Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, where he, again, loses to Ant-Man. So we've seen him show up twice, and he's lost both times, and we're supposed to be afraid of him. It just doesn't work. So the difference between Kang and Thanos is that Thanos is terrifying. He never lost. He literally took on all of the Avengers at the same time, and none of them could stop him. He easily defeated Hulk, who's considered one of the strongest Avengers, and you can see the look of terror on their faces whenever he makes his introduction.
What is it?
He's here.
Everyone on my position. We have incoming.
What the hell?
Up until the events of Endgame, the three pillars of the MCU were Captain America, who was the leader of the Avengers. He was the heart of the team, the strategist, and really the moral compass of the group. And then you have Iron Man, who started the entire MCU with the first amazing movie. He is an absolute genius and the brains of the operation for sure. And then you have Thanos, who is always in the background. There's always this overwhelming sense of dread that one day he's going to come and kill everyone. He's always a foreboding presence in the background leading up until Infinity War and Endgame. But the problem is, if you remove all the pillars or the foundation of what makes the MCU so interesting, which happened in Endgame, all of a sudden the stakes are gone and you need to build a new foundation from scratch. One of the biggest problems Marvel has is that they're really focusing on the wrong characters for Phase 4. A great example of that is the dollar store version of Captain America here. And look, I know that the US agent is in the comic books and that he's essentially being set up here to introduce the Thunderbolts later on, but I just don't think they're that interesting of a group or a character in this example. Another example is Kamala Khan or Miss Marvel. The show was absolutely horrible in my opinion. It had the production values of a CW show, and it was like a teen comedy / drama with one of the worst villains I've ever seen in any Marvel production. The CG was horrible, particularly when they would turn into skeletons, and it was just a horrible show. Its focus seemed to be on emphasizing the fact that this is a Pakistani-based character, and look, I'm all about inclusion. I think it's great that people that are Pakistani have a superhero they can stand behind, but the story needs to be good also. It can't just stand on that. Another example is Riri Williams. She was introduced to us in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and she's supposed to take the mantle of Iron Man. The problem with that concept is it just doesn't make any sense. In the comic books, Iron Man was one of the smartest people on planet Earth, and his father was also a genius, and they built over time Stark Industries, which was specialized in weapons, so it makes sense that he would have the background and knowledge to build this kind of a suit, and he really built that suit out of necessity. In the original Iron Man movie, he was captured and he built it in a cave to save his own life because he was dying. So it felt earned in that scenario, where as Riri Wilson is just a college student who doesn't have that background and on her first try is able to create an Iron Man suit, and it doesn't make a lot of sense when you take a second to step back and think about it. And I love the actress that plays Riri. I really do like her. It's just the context behind her taking over the mantle, it doesn't feel earned. And I think one of the biggest things Marvel's missing at this point in Phase 4 is the nostalgia factor. I think that's where a lot of their success came from. People that grew up reading Iron Man and Spider-Man and Hulk and all of these Avengers comics as a kid, and now they've grown up and they get to see those franchises finally done justice on the big screen, and that's where a lot of their fan base is coming from. So when you're introducing all these new characters that don't have that nostalgia, that we didn't grow up reading, and you're asking us to care about them, but we don't really have anything to help us do that here, so the lack of interest is derived from that. And it's not just new characters that are the problem. Taking existing characters like Black Widow, for example, we already know that she died in Endgame, so we already know how her story plays out. Releasing this movie after Endgame to start off Phase 4 makes absolutely no sense. This should have come out before Endgame. Another example of a lack of stakes, in my opinion, is Thor: Love and Thunder. This movie was an absolute joke. It was essentially just a comedy, and nothing in it had any real levity to it. The outcome of the story didn't change anything in any significant ways. In the comic books, Gore the God Butcher was one of the coolest villains that Thor had ever faced. He's just such a badass. And in the movie, they tell you, oh, you should be scared of this guy. He's super imposing. He's killed all of these gods. He's so powerful, but they never actually show you any of that. The only thing they show you in the movie is that he kidnapped a bunch of children. And then for some reason, towards the end of the movie, spoiler alert, Thor, out of nowhere, has the ability to give all of these kids his powers. Like, why didn't he do that in Endgame? Why didn't he give all the Avengers powers to help with Thanos? It just doesn't make any sense. It's like Marvel's not really trying anymore. And they also didn't do Jane Foster's character justice either. She literally, there's one scene of exposition where she approaches the broken hammer of Mjolnir and then just instantly knows how to wield it, knows how to fly and do all kinds of superhero stuff with zero explanation as to how she's just immediately on Thor's level. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't feel earned. I think that's a reoccurring theme with Phase 4. And that's not to say that the previous phases didn't have any stinkers. Captain Marvel, not a good movie. It was horrible. Thor, The Dark World, another notoriously bad movie in the previous phases of the MCU, but the difference here is that Phase 4 has a lot more of these mediocre movies. This phase has been consistently inconsistent compared to the previous phases. Now, look, there's shows like Hawkeye, for example. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was entertaining, to say the least, but it didn't really move the dial, and there weren't a ton of stakes. You know, it didn't really need to be made. Moon Knight is one that really hurts on a personal level because I love this character in the comic books, but I didn't think they did the character justice in the show. You barely get to see him in costume, and Oscar Isaac does a great job with the multiple personalities, but overall, I thought this one was a bit of a disappointment as well. You've also got Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Now, this is one of the more recent entries into the MCU, and I really, really liked it, with the exception of Adam Warlock. I thought that character got butchered in this movie and didn't need to be in it. What If is a show that I thought was so mediocre. I thought the first episode was okay, but all the other episodes were a complete bore for me. That was hard to sit through. Werewolf by Night was a pleasant surprise. I like that a lot, actually, but I think that has more to do with the fact that I'm a horror fan. She-Hulk I loved, and I know I'm in the minority there. A lot of people think this is quote-unquote a woke show, but the way the character is portrayed in the show is exactly how she is in the comics, so it's 100% true to the source material. Black Panther 2 was pretty good. I liked it. At first I had some reservations over the casting of Namor. I didn't think he was a good fit for the role, but I actually think he did an okay job, and I liked the movie overall. I didn't think it was amazing. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was okay. It was entertaining at the very least, but it wasn't great, and I didn't like the drastic change to a villain with Wanda Maximoff. The Eternals, that was okay. The problem is that nobody cares about the Eternals. That's not a comic book that was ever popular, and it was an okay movie. It's just, again, it falls in the same category of some of the newer characters that a lot of people don't have any nostalgia for, and it's hard to care about these brand new people that weren't gradually introduced to us over time. Aside from Spider-Man, No Way Home, Loki, and WandaVision, I don't think there are any excellent examples of filmmaking in this current phase of the MCU. So a lot of people are saying that the MCU is dead and there's no coming back from this, and that Endgame was the ultimate, culmination of everything Marvel, and maybe they're right, but I think there is still hope. And I think Marvel has a big card under its sleeve in the form of the X-Men. I know X-Men have had movies before, but they were not done by Marvel, and I think that the X-Men will breathe new life into the MCU. The only question is, will it be too late by the time they finally arrive? These are characters that have been around forever and everyone loves and has so much nostalgia for. It's a shame that we're never going to get a proper X-Men versus Avengers setup. I remember seeing that back in the day in the OG X-Men comics, and it would have been really cool to see that with Iron Man and Cap and the full cast. I'm also looking forward to Blade. I think that's going to be amazing. That's an upcoming movie slated for Phase 4, and it is going to bring back, I think, a more mature horror-themed content to the MCU, and I think along with the introduction of Ghost Rider, that could lead up to a Midnight Suns movie, which would be amazing to see. Now, Secret Invasion is a recent Disney Plus show that is ongoing right now, and I think that's a big step in the right direction because it's bringing back the more serious tone of something like Captain America: The Winter Soldier. There is one conversation in episode 2 between Rhodey and Nick Fury that when I saw this scene, I was at the edge of my seat, and I was like, "This is what I love about Marvel." The writing was super intelligent, and it kept me on the edge of my seat. Seeing these characters interact in this way brought me back to the Avengers days, and they hired some alumni from Game of Thrones for the writing on this one. Let me know what you think in the comments below about the current state of the MCU, and if you think there's any redemption in their future.